By providing us with the line slope and y-intercept, the slope-intercept form of a line actually provides us with a quick method for graphing the line. So in our example, we want to find the slope and the y-intercept of the equation and then use them to graph the equation. So if we look at part A, the first thing I notice is that we have y equals, which tells me that this equation is already in slope-intercept form. Because remember, anytime that an equation is solved for y, that means it's in slope-intercept form. So in order to find the slope and the intercept, all we have to do is look at the coefficient of x for the slope. So in this case, the slope would be 3/2. And then we need to look at the b value, or the constant, in order to find the y-intercept. Now remember that the b value is the y value of the y-intercept, but if you think back to when we talked about intercepts initially, what did we say was always true about the x value of a y-intercept? Well, x is always 0. So the y-intercept in this case is going to be 0, -3. And don't forget to include the sign, because this sign goes with the b value. So our y-intercept is 0, -3. So now that we have our slope and our y-intercept, we are ready to graph. So we go to first plot the y-intercept, so 0 on x and -3 on y. So there's the y-intercept, and that's 1 point on the graph. And then we can use the slope in order to find another point on the graph, because remember, the slope is the change in y over the change in x. So the change in y is a +3, so that says go up 1, 2, 3. And the change in x is a +2, so that says go to the right 1, 2, and there's another point on the graph. So now all we have to do is connect these 2 points with a straight line and put arrows on the end, and we have a sketch of the graph of y equals 3/2 x -3. So as you can see, if the graph's already in slope-intercept form, it is very easy to use the slope and the intercept to sketch the graph. Now, what about an example like B, where we are given a line that is not in slope-intercept form? Well, it's still a fairly simple process to graph it using the slope and the y-intercept, because all we have to do is write it in slope-intercept form, which means solve the equation for y, and we learned how to do that in a previous video. And then we can find the slope and the intercept and use those to sketch the graph. So first thing I want to do is get this solved for y. So I want my 2y to be on one side by itself. That means I need to move my x term. Since it is positive or has been added, we're going to subtract it from both sides. So I get 2y is equal to 8 minus x. Now to get y by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by 2. And again, remember that you must divide every term on both sides by 2. So 8 gets divided by 2 and leaves me with 4. And a -1x gets divided by 2, which leaves me with a -1/2 times x. So now we have the equation in slope-intercept form, and we're ready to find both the slope and the y-intercept. But be careful, because notice that my terms are not in the order that we're used to. We're used to seeing slope-intercept form where the x term comes first and the constant comes second. But notice that that's not the case in this example. And that's okay. We still find the slope by finding the coefficient of the x term. So in this case, -1/2. And we still find the b value by looking at the constant, which in this case is 4, so the y-intercept would be the point 0, 4. So again, we go to our graph, we plot 0, 4. Then we use our slope to find another point. Now, be careful, because when your slope is negative, the negative can either go with the top number or it can go with the bottom number. It cannot go with both. So I usually let my negative go with the top number. So that tells me I have a change in y of -1, so that's down 1. And then a change in x of +2, so that's right 2, and that would be a point. But I want to show you quickly that if I had chosen to let the negative go with the bottom, I would have ended up with a y value change of +1, so up 1, and an x value change of -2, so left 2, and notice that we still find a point on the same line. So it doesn't matter whether you let the negative go with the top number or the bottom number, as long as you put it with one and not both of them. So this would be the sketch of the graph of x plus 2y is equal to 8.